Securing America with me, Frank Gaffney, the program that's a kind of owner's manual for protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to God's glory and that of his kingdom. A man I have come to admire greatly for his insights, his thoughtfulness, his expertise on matters involving the most serious threat to the country we love, namely the Chinese Communist Party, is our first guest. His name is Dr. Bradley Thayer. He is, among other things, a member of our Committee on the Present Danger China, a very, very prolific contributor to the public policy debate, notably at the Hill newspaper and Epoch Times. He's the author of a number of books, including a very important one about Han supremacism, which I commend to you all. He is gracious with his time. We're always delighted to catch up with him. Brad, welcome back to Securing America.
Good morning, Frank. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is mine. I'm anxious to talk with you about a couple of topics that tie the China threat into larger world geostrategic issues. Specifically, you've written recently about the entente, as you call it, between the Russians and the Chinese. It clearly was put into play formally shortly before the invasion by the Russians of Ukraine. Talk a little bit about the state of that entente as you see it at the moment, and whether net it's becoming more dangerous as a result of the reverses that the Russians have experienced to date.
Thank you, Frank. That's an excellent question and a very significant issue for the United States. Um, the United States faces, of course, the threat of China, and China, of course, is a prodigious power and becoming more powerful in relative terms. The warming of the relationship between Moscow and Beijing certainly helps Beijing. In that it gives the Chinese the ability to employ Russian assets, intelligence assets, military power, diplomatic influence, also ideological influence around the world. So the warming of this relationship is very bad for the United States. And as you noted, it was precipitated before the Ukraine war, but it has greatly increased. Fundamentally, there.
Specifically, I assume the dependence on Russia for help from the Chinese in terms of buying oil and gas and perhaps other commodities. Let me ask you though about the visit to Ukraine, Brad, yesterday by the Secretaries of State and Defense of the United States, Tony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, respectively. And in particular, a comment made by Lloyd Austin on the margins of those conversations with President Zelensky of Ukraine, namely that I guess it's a goal, a policy of the United States government to seek the actual defeat of Russia in Ukraine. Your thoughts on that and how that might play into this Russian Chinese dynamic?
Well, it plays very importantly into it. It's an unfortunate comment in the sense that it was made publicly. If that's U.S. strategy, of course, we shouldn't express it openly. Weakening Russia just ensures that they ever increasingly warm their relationship with China. And so, there are only so many centers of power in international politics: the United States, Japan, South Korea, China, India, Europe, and Russia in a military sense, in terms of its military might and intelligence capabilities. Driving Russia towards China only helps China. We have, again, the very difficult task of focusing on the China threat. And anything that helps China hurts us in that supreme contest, which we are now fighting and that we will continue to fight for the rest of the century, very likely. And so moving Russia towards China is a strategic complication and indeed an error in terms of that. What we should be doing is our utmost to ensure that China does not have any allies, it does not have any support from any major power in international politics. And what we're witnessing is really the solidification of that relationship between Moscow and Beijing, which makes our already Herculean task of confronting China even more difficult.
Yes. I want to talk to you about the quality of leadership that may be contributing to this misapplication of strategy, if you will. You've written very interesting pieces recently about both our own leadership and its shortcomings, but also excellence in the leadership of the British military. Walk us through quickly what is needed at a moment like this, whether it's on the military side or the civilian side, as we're facing not one, but now two of these formidable adversaries.
Yeah, Frank, several elements are needed, but most importantly, it's an understanding of the tradition. It's an understanding of the inheritance that military officers have in terms of how the problems that we face today have been faced before by previous officers, and the lessons, the culture, the habits of excellence in particular, of ensuring that they make the what's necessary to ensure that the chain of command is respected, that the enlisted are respected as well, is supremely important for the combat effectiveness of the United States. The British Army has that tradition. The United States Army has that. U.S. military has that tradition as well, but it's being eroded by ideological factors as well as some other, but ideological factors are the most significant. So the US military needs to recapture its heritage. It needs to recapture the value of its traditions, its culture, its language, even. The recognition that it faces an enemy that has to be defeated is the most salient element there. And if we are able to inspire military officers once again, that only greatly is a major fill-up in our confrontation with the Chinese, People's Liberation Army in particular, who do not have that tradition, which is an important asset for us as we move ahead.
Their tradition is one of a highly politicized military. I think it's fair to say, with the political commissars literally operating sort of a parallel chain of command. You said several things though that I want to just come back to quickly, Brad. We're going to have to take a break here in a moment, but what we are dealing with, it seems to me, is not nearly a need to have the military leadership be respected, but to be worthy of respect. And in part, that's a function, it seems to me, of the accommodations that the current military leadership has made to the ideological demands of this current administration, the Biden administration. And specifically, I'm thinking about this layering of um, politicized policies on the military, whether it's the critical race theory agenda or whether it's the social experimentation or engineering agenda, whether it's the COVID vaccine mandates for that matter, all of which have an impact, it seems to me, on the culture of the military. And I'm so glad you've emphasized that, Brad. Just give me a minute on that because we have to take, as I say, a short break.
Certainly, a great political scientist, Samuel Huntington, wrote an incredible book, The Soldier and the State, where he made a very elegant, sophisticated argument that the United States military has to have its independent domain. The military has to be left to its own devices under civilian direction. It takes its orders from civilians, but then civilians stay out of it and allow the military to develop their own mechanisms, their own solutions. And we need to recapture that. As you noted, that's being eroded.
It is.
And it's really a torrent,
I
not
would
just
argue that yeah, it's actually under active assault, not just being eroded. It seems there's a sort of I'd say war on the U.S. military by the Biden team. Brad, hold the thought. We're going to come right back with more with Dr. Bradley Thayer right after this.